still no order, just.
This is just the very beginning. We're seeing a lot of this develop, I would imagine, in the next few months. Again, I think you hit the issues on the head, traffic. You know, turnaround, that is a big intersection, that's a busy pedestrian intersection. You know, people going to and from the train station. How many times you're going to have people just walking into that intersection? I hope you include that in your counts. That is also going to slow down that intersection. Because that is, again, people going to and from the train station, to and from the retail and commercial places. I would just say, one of the things that always surprises me also is traffic, the way we use it. I think one of the good things the town did is we undertook a major traffic study, which is still in development. We actually never have seen a final traffic study because it's still in development. That all being said, I'm glad to hear that you're actually in conversation with our traffic people. One of the things I've always been a proponent of is rather than everybody coming to the town with their own traffic expert, that we rely on one traffic expert that is consistently looking at the overall impact of traffic of any development in town. That being said, you are in conversation with our traffic experts, and I'll be anxious to hear from our own folks as this project proceeds. I like the uses. I like what you're doing with the property. I think the town, you hit it right on the head when you said the town needs more office. The town does need more office. I think it does add to the viability of our town. The other thing I would ask, which was very, very important, is the walkways. You know, I think Phil has done a good job, of course, in the past to make sure that the walkways are walkable, wide enough, shielded from the traffic on the street. I think you guys had several elements of that in your presentation, which was nice to see. The other thing I would actually bring up also is that you also tell us a little bit about what happens to the traffic on Morris Avenue, to the traffic on Spring Street, what if other people develop their properties in the surrounding area as a matter of right. Okay, it's not just this property owner, it's the other property owners also located in the central business district. What does the traffic on these two streets look like? What if other property owners also ask for some of the same rights that this project might be getting? Because that, we just can't look at this one static project. You really have to look at the projects that may be coming down the road. So we also should be looking at or considering the what if in this master plan, because it's the plan is the zone we're concerned about, not specifically the project. So it's really the what if of the surrounding areas too that I think we have to be considering. And you've got a great team here. I'm sure they can provide a lot of information as the project progresses. Thank you.
Toshiba, could we respond to the council's questions?
Well, since we don't have public, I will allow it, but I have a question. When you talk about traffic in the roundabout, it starts, you know, I guess at the top of Morris, where it's coming from Morris, and it is that spring. But when you go down Spring Street up to where the top of Spring Street, where CVS is, did you factor in how the traffic, I mean, because it's going to flow right there, but then it does bottleneck up at the corner of CVS, Spring Street and Flagler. So have you done any type of studies to see how you're going to continuously make the traffic flow?
Okay, can I turn it over to traffic? Because on the, I can answer Bob's question too, or I'll let these guys do it. The roundabout has excess capacity for future growth. You guys can tell them exact percentage, but go ahead.
Well, the existing intersection is constrained. Any growth on that existing intersection is just going to continue to exacerbate what you see today. You saw this evening the freeing effect of the roundabout, and you know, it has capacity. In fact, that was one of the things your traffic engineer was challenging us to make sure we were leaving capacity in the roundabout. So from that standpoint, it creates that additional ability to free up the internal nodes. With regard to the downstream intersection, yes, as I indicated, we analyzed the network. We understand the influence of the traffic signal at Martin Luther King and the intersections further. That's all in our network so that we were understanding how it hurts. The roundabout doesn't solve those intersections, but those intersections do benefit from this node freeing up, and the roundabout actually couples well with a lot of the recommendations that were made in the mobility study in terms of some adjustments at signals away. So when you start to couple everything together, it actually creates an enhancement to the network, but it doesn't solve all the downstream issues.
The worst kind of issue you have one of the issues you have right now is that basically all the cars get released on the green light at one time, and they all show up at the next red light all together. The fact that basically instead now we're going to have a very even approach, so cars will arrive at a more even pace, which will help free up down the line. And you know that intersection you're referring to, the one near CVS, that again, we're untying congestion at this intersection. I think that intersection, as part of the Speedwell redevelopment, had a different design or future design at that intersection as well. So again, I think this is one cog in freeing up potentially further other things down the line.
Just a couple questions. From a traffic perspective, did your simulation incorporate the added riders that were drivers that would presumably be coming to this office complex?
Yeah, as indicated earlier on, we factored in the full development of the two office buildings and the retail, as well as traffic associated with the garage by the Morristown Parking Authority and the developments in the area that supports, as well as growth. We put some general growth in there also to reflect the things that are sort of happening in the area.
How did you define that growth?
Basically a percentage overall growth based upon historical trends in the area.
And one of the benefits the roundabout as it relates to this development, other developments on Mars, is what this roundabout allows is for this site not to have left turn ingress or egress from Mars. For the bane of traffic, especially in Morristown, is a lot of times this left turn, a car waiting in the through lane or a car where everyone has to scoot around. Because we have the roundabout, one of the challenges with this site is people want to go back home via 287. This allows cars to make a right out of our site, go to the roundabout, and come back the other way. So we've eliminated the need for left turn movements, which again speaks to your mobility plan, allows us for a narrower driveway, some better pedestrian experience on Morris. And again, the benefit of eliminating left turns is just beneficial from a traffic point of view altogether.
What's the radius of the roundabout?
150 feet is the radius, is the inside diameter.
The outside is 180, I believe.
Yes. But, so again, the aspect of this roundabout, one of the different design tweaks that we've worked with, as opposed to what is typically seen as a multi-lane roundabout where it's 2 lanes all the way around, even the interior, where if you're on the inner lane and you want to get off at the next leg, you have to kind of work your way over the outside, you know, leave yourself out there, you get trapped in the middle, a little European vacation, if anyone's seen it, we just keep driving around the circle and can't get out. The benefit of the way this roundabout's been designed, it's taking a little more of a more context-sensitive approach. Basically, if you are on the inside of the roundabout at one leg, you have the opportunity to get out. If not, you become the outer leg at the next one. So you don't have to do the weaving where you have to look over your shoulder and change lanes. This roundabout actually pushes you to the outside, so you become the next one up to exit the next approach. So it's a little different than what you see typically, and I don't know if you have one of the roundabout images. That's why it's not completely circular on the inside. It's because it's this more innovative approach, this one. So basically in...
I see, yeah.
Yes,
So you're pushed to the outside on the upper left.
exactly.
Yep.
So again, that's why when we say radii, it's actually not a true circle in a sense. So it's not because it's stretched in a couple different directions. But it is, I would say, one of the more innovative designs. As people have worked through this multi-lane roundabout design, this became one of the safest options, adds capacity because you don't have that weaving from the inside to outside being performed.
And there's certainly no passage issues for a large fire truck or an 18-wheeler or something like that?
And working with your traffic reviewer, we ran W67, there's like 6 bus lines that go through here, making sure the bus could traverse, within the normal pavement. W67, which is the largest tractor trailer you see, which based on our counts, we were out there for, I think, 8 hours or 9 hours, we counted 4 of these massive trucks. They're able to circulate this in a proper manner.
And what were the other areas that you said, these roundabouts, Westfield?
Well, there are a number of towns that have adopted and have roundabouts, and currently Princeton has used them quite extensively, particularly in their pedestrian environment between Princeton University's residence halls along Alexander Road and the university. West Windsor has them, Rutherford has one by the train station, Westfield by the train station.
And again, I would state that not every roundabout is this exact design. I
All
think
a little different.
this design, I think, is context sensitive to this location. Again, the way the legs work. And then one thing I just want to clarify, because I think the question will come up. There is one modification that we're making to Wilmot Street as part of this project. We are proposing it to be one way away from the roundabout,
Which is consistent with the mobility study.
which was, again, was suggested there as well. So you could still, you leave the roundabout and you could go through Wilmot, but you can't enter the intersection.
So is Vermont still a two-way street? Is that
It becomes a one-way street, and that was something your mobility study identified early on in order to eliminate one of the conflicts in this whole intersection.
you talked to the MPA, the parking authority?
Yeah, they actually
what their
favor that.
plans are, because we haven't seen their access plan yet.
They're still working on it. Their traffic engineer is a little behind us and probably will rely on a lot of what we've done.
So, one of the things that concerns me about the roundabout is the circles that I've been to is it makes like a right angle. Like when you're going around the circle, it's like at a 45-degree angle. And it's like if you're coming on Moore Street, say, I'm thinking of like the Knickerbocker Circle in Cresskill, in Dumont, and it's like 4 corners.
Yeah.
So it's very symmetrical. This isn't very symmetrical, it's more like a triad or, so I'm just wondering, does that ameliorate the traffic or does that exacerbate the traffic or, having this,
Right.
And the other question I have for you is Spring Lake, as you're getting off of the parkway and you're going to the shore, that's another roundabout, is that another roundabout that you're familiar with? Because I just see that being very devastating every time I enter that traffic circle.
Well, the shore traffic's probably a whole different issue in terms of everybody going to the shore or coming from the shore, but with regard to your angle of approach and angle of deflection, in fact, that was one of the issues that Brian actually brought some very good information in more current standards. It is something that is explicitly designed. It does affect the design of the intersection. It does affect the capacity of the intersection. And this intersection, the design on this has advanced as we've looked at those details of how traffic is properly deflected in accordance with current standards, both from an operational standpoint. So those are all explicitly designed. It's not just these 3 legs come together, we put a circle in between and connect it. They are thought out, and there are standards on how those angles are calculated.
So you mean a roundabout doesn't have to be like 4 corners?
Does not. And that's one of the advantages of the roundabouts. They can actually take some of our oddball intersections such as this that have different legs and different angles in different directions and bring some order to it.
Yeah, I've seen ones that look like peanuts, where you end up almost stretching it in certain directions. The one key feature which allows this intersection to be well designed for roundabout is you do want to have some separation between each legs, which is the reason why Wilmot had to go away from the intersection, because if that was going towards the roundabout, the distance between Morris and Wilmot is very, very tight, and that would become an issue. But because the legs are fairly kind of spaced evenly, it allows this roundabout to work.
Now, the streets aren't getting reconfigured or anything, the roadways aren't getting reconfigured. The buildings like Fatty's that's there now, and the Dunkin' Donuts at the corner, they're not getting moved, are they? Or is, maybe that's a question for Phil.
The roundabout has been designed so that it falls on properties that the applicant and the joint venture partner controls. So there is some adjustments and widening within properties that are under the control of the applicant. And the approach roadways, there will be some reconstruction and widening, but it's all within a more constrained area than what would have to happen if you tried to solve and add more lanes for a traffic signal.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
And I think it's, I think it's really an important fact that we did talk about that our initial traffic studies, the townwide traffic studies recommended this solution. One of the reasons why it was sort of left on the drawing table, or whatever that is because of the right-of-way requirement. That we don't have the public right-of-way to build something like this, so we had to make a compromise of just sort of doing what we could, making Wilmot one way in, doing, you know, a few seconds of green time for there, and a few seconds for green time there. This is a better solution than anything we could have come up with as a town, frankly, without condemning property. For this project to come forward is somewhat of a blessing, because, and it does include 2 private properties, the Fatty's property, and it includes the 7-Eleven.
I don't doubt the traffic flow improvement with the roundabout. I've
Yeah.
seen it.
But to answer your question,
But
it was
my
the
concern
private
is you have
properties.
George and Martha's, you have Dunkin' Donuts, you have.
Those are on the other side of the street.
So that, and then
They don't have-
Fatty's, and then.
That doesn't get touched at all.
Nothing gets
No,
touched.
the Fatty's property is impacted.
Okay, and what about the,
7-Eleven is impacted,
okay.
and nothing on the other side.
North,
North would be
no,
toward,
south of Fatty's, toward the green?
nothing.
Nothing, okay.
And those are all properties under control of the property owner of Vintage.
No, I should have prefaced my comments by saying that this is brilliant. You know, a roundabout's a brilliant way to streamline traffic, but I want to echo the council president's concern about the abutting intersections, because not only do you have the MLK and that end, but don't you have the traffic south up on the green?
Well,
So that's a
yeah.
intersection that bottlenecks too, right
And-
at South Park Place.
Like when you start to dig into this traffic stuff, like this conversation right now, the thing that you learn is that there's no such thing as an isolated issue. That this is all a network, just like,
Well, I think it's important to say, Phil, when you talk about roundabout technology,
Sure.
it's brilliant, but it also is brilliant, like when you look at cities like Paris or Washington DC, when it's all abutting, when you have these series of roundabouts. I'm a little concerned, and I don't want to be negative, it's just this is how I think, that you have the roundabout constrained by intersections, because it's not the ideal, I would say it's probably not the ideal use.
so here's just a couple of things I'll tell you, not to step on traffic engineering toes here. The cues that the council president brought up, which would be heading like basically northbound on Spring to northbound Speedwell, those cues never get to this intersection to the point where it would affect the performance of this intersection. That's one thing. The other thing about that is we've been looking at northbound, at both faces of Speedwell, or both directions on Speedwell between Spring and Flagler for 5 years now, with every phase of the redevelopment, with the CVS, with the both Modera projects. We've taken those opportunities. We have solutions for those. The reason why they weren't really discussed here is because this is like one of the few locations in Morristown where the signals are far apart from each other. Every other place really, the signal's like signal, signal, signal. This one has so much distance in between that this sort of does begin to function from a queue, from a gridlock standpoint, on its own. That the legs are so long leading up to this intersection.
I'd like to see more on the queue.
We owe you more.
Yeah,
we understand
definitely,
that.
because I'd like to see the distances and look at that a little more closely. And, you know, I have concerns about how it's all going to be related. Because I think we've been talking about the traffic study and how the queuing and the signaling needs to get fixed. So, and the lack of coordination with the state and our town and all of that, you know, I'd really like to see that this plan tackle that in whatever way. Because, you know, if it's dependent on that, then it's sort of codependent on it, and and that's a concern
Yes,
toward the success of the overall.
it's good feedback.
Just one last comment. I think your biggest challenge is convincing the public that the 8 stories falls in line with sort of context-sensitive design. I think that's going to be your biggest challenge.
I agree.
And I will add to that, when we were designing the parking garage is no higher than the post office. And a lot of that was basically to preserve somewhat of what we call the skyscraper as you're walking towards the green of the steeples and downtown Morristown. So it's just, when you come back, it would be interesting to see perspectives from various points, so people have context of what the, I'll call the panorama is going to somewhat look like.
I think your biggest benefit is Class A office space, because the Smith King Law Firm moved out to Florin Park in the building on the corner, on the green there, across from that historic building. And the reason they moved was because they wanted Class A office space. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits, that it brings two office buildings with outdoor space, which is very unique. It almost kind of reminds me of the 14 Maple Avenue building when that got built, and how much that kind of spurred a lot of innovative design. So I think that's the selling point, but I agree that the density and the traffic are going to be the biggest hurdles.
Frank, one thing that wasn't touched upon too heavily or at all is the parking deck behind. What is the capacity and the height of that parking?
So it's a 5-level garage, 900 spaces.
How many?
Four levels above ground.
Okay.
Okay.
How many spaces?
How many
Up
spaces?
to 1,000.
What's the access to that garage?
Through the center, and there's also access on the side.
And the loading docks are where?
Same general area.
And does that loading road and entrance, does that go down to Bishop Nazareth?
You want to just
Yeah, so as part of the redevelopment plan, it goes to Spring Place, but Spring Place relocated. So it's an adjustment, an improvement to Spring Place, pulled away from the intersection, and it would tie into there. The intent is, future portions of the redevelopment plan, potentially go to Bishop Nazareth, potentially it changes, but for this portion of the project, it would go to a relocated Spring Place.
And so that it'll be somewhere in between Morris, Bishop Nazareth, there'll be a entrance and exit into that parking garage.
Correct.
And into the loading. So
The loading on the building to the left, or the building to the right, will be access to the loading plaza falls between the Highlands and the building. Yes. And those are real low volume locations. I think the way we would design that, sort of a plaza, an interactive plaza that service vehicles could use, but really continue the pedestrian space.
But considering a master plan, the ultimate plan would be to bring that entrance and exit down to Nazareth to avoid two stops.
It's an option, but right now it's really Spring
Oh, right
Place.
now, river constriction.
Somebody say it again.
The river's in between those two
Oh, okay.
locations.
Now, 2 more questions. So the parking deck, the first level is going to be masqueraded so that you don't notice you're walking by a parking garage?
There's going to be a green wall
Okay.
in the entry and drop-off spot. So what you'd see as a pedestrian walking by is the green wall in front. And the
Okay.
rest of it is sort of tucked behind the building.
And then the first point that Phil alluded to was that the site is at the lowest points, some of the lowest points in town. So has the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee, or have you reached out and talked with them in your assessment, your initial plan?
I have not. Have you? Yeah, we will certainly reach out to them when we come back.
Okay. I mean, I think they're a stakeholder in this since it's so close to the Whippany River, and I just, would be concerned about potential flooding, or is this not?
Yeah, I don't think that's a concern at this site.
It isn't,
We're
it's
higher,
not,
much
we are
higher
higher than the flood area?
Yeah.
Just a
Okay.
point of clarification, the yellow electrical plumbing supply building that's on Spring Street, that's not really part of this.
It's not part of this
This
concept.
project, okay, so that's staying. Where the Columbia Bakery is.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get a clearer picture of what's in, what the zone is.
Frank, also when you come back, and you've done this with other projects, just the open space that you're creating on the exterior of the building, to what extent that is truly public space,
Yeah.
open to the public.
I just have probably one final question, it might be a little premature. Do you have any idea what type of, for the retail space, what type of retail you're looking to attract?
Yeah, it's pretty early. I mean, we have a pretty aggressive team that'll be out there looking. I mean, the idea is to upgrade and reposition the retail.
And did you say how much retail space?
Roger, how much?
About 30,000, almost 30,000.
Almost 30,000.
30,000? Any idea on the statue in the roundabout? Our mayor.
I don't think so. That'll be But thank you.
Frank, can you go back to an aerial shot? So I just heard 3 or 4 members of the board express concerns about height. Think about the building on the left. If you were to take the top 3 or 4 floors and kick them back so that they're cantilevered over the parking deck, that would decrease the mass on the street significantly, and you'd still be able to maintain a significant amount of square footage. Could be a win-win for everybody.
Are that all, are there any other comments from council members?
Aside from what's been said about the different viewpoints and a few of the other items, is there anything else that when we do come back that you'd be interested in knowing more about, or something we should focus on?
Well, I think we gave you more than viewpoints.
Yeah. We would love to come back with everything. That's what I'm asking.
Just one other point, on the corner of the farthest, the corner of the, where is it, the northern corner, I guess, of the building, which I think that creates this, that corner right there, across the street, actually right there. Basically, it's the smallest choke point with a pedestrian that as you turn going down to Spring Street, you can give us the sort of dimensions of that. And,
Okay.
that seems like it's the smallest, or the greatest choke point for pedestrian inflow and then public space. So.
Frank, again, my big question is the what if, what's the impact? Because it's a redevelopment zone, you want it to less problems, not create more problems, but also you want to look at the context with what can be built within the area, outside of the development zone, how many stories, what's going to be the density, what's going to be the traffic. So it's really that what if question, because you really just can't look at one project in isolation.
The capacity of the traffic circle.
Yeah.
Which means more specifics on how the roundabout will work when other buildings are being built in the future on that redevelopment. More specifics because it was too bad.
Okay, well, thank you all who came out tonight to be with us just to hear, and thank you for everybody who presented. You guys did a wonderful job, and we look forward to seeing you again with a more specific and, I guess, more points to answer the comments, you know, from our council. And, you know, of course, I'm sure maybe now that this will just fill up some stuff, so I'll probably have more.
Morristown.